Good morning. My name is Ben Rarick. I'm the Executive Director of the State Board of Education. And I just want to thank you for your willingness to participate in the Achievement and Accountability Work Group, or what I'll probably just be referring to here on as the AAW. Our reason for being is that the ESEA flexibility waiver gives us a historic opportunity to take the next step in developing the accountability system that the legislature envisioned when it passed Senate Bill 6696. It's our opportunity to replace AYP and incorporate a concept of student growth in the way that we hold schools accountable and recognize them for performance. As far as the goals for today's webinar, there are 6. First, we want to explain the AAW purpose and composition, provide an overview of the ESEA flexibility request, describe SBE and OSPI roles in creating and revising the index, share an overview of the current index and possible revisions, review the timeline of materials, and also at the end we'll respond to your questions. First of all, as to the AAW purpose, there are really 2 main purposes. The first is to provide input on a revised index. And we will be asking key questions like, what performance indicators should the index include? Should it include elements of achievement or growth, or indeed growth gaps? Should it include indicators of college and career readiness? These are the questions we'll be asking. How should it measure opportunity gaps? And what weight should we assign to the various indicators that are ultimately included? But the index is only as meaningful as what it drives in terms of decision-making about recognition of schools and technical assistance. So the very necessary second component of this group is to talk about elements of an accountability framework to ensure that all students graduate career and college ready.
So my name is Aaron Wyatt, and I am the Communications Director here at the State Board of Education. We have representatives from 22 groups that are making up the Achievement and Accountability Work Group, 1 from each of the agencies listed here. Each agency was asked to appoint 1 representative. In addition, we have several subgroups participating in the AAW process. So this next chart shows the multiple gears that are going to be moving during the next few months with our work on the Achievement Index and accountability. And this slide shows the relationship between the Achievement and Accountability Work Group and the other components. The Achievement and Accountability Work Group will be vital in informing the work of the State Board of Education and the Superintendent of Public Instruction. OSPI and SBE staff combine to form a steering committee that will make sure that the Achievement and Accountability Work Group members have the materials and information needed. We also have a technical advisory committee which will provide technical expertise as we move closer to index development.
Good morning, this is Sarah Rich. I'm the Policy Director here with the State Board of Education. I'm just going to talk briefly about some elements of an accountability system to ground you in where we're headed with the AAW work and the index revision work. What you can see here are some elements of an accountability framework. It's not exhaustive, but the elements in green are the items that the index will specifically address. And so you see performance indicators, which is essentially what gets measured. Ben already touched on some ideas for performance indicators. There's a green bubble here that says goals. So for example, we might have a statewide goal that 90% or 95% of students graduate, for example. It will include some design decisions. So there are 2 examples here, but there are many more that we can talk about at future AAW meetings. But one example is, do we want to have a compensatory system where relative high performance balances out an area of lower performance? Or would we want to have a conjunctive system, which is what current AYP is, where if you miss 1 cell, you just don't make AYP? Another example of a design decision is sort of the continuum of simplicity to complexity. So a highly complex system can be as fair and accurate and as possible, but if it's too complex, then parents and stakeholders and teachers don't necessarily understand it and find it accessible. So those are the kinds of design decisions and concepts that we'll be addressing. I'm going to skip the purple bubble for a moment and look at tier designations. And that's really a policy level judgment that says that a certain level of performance merits a very good assessment, for example. And then going back to the purple bubble, consequences, that would be a series of rewards and recognition for high performance, a system of assistance to ensure schools and districts have the tools and the support that they need for success, and intervention for low-performing schools. And this purple phase is partially addressed with federal accountability, but right now, solely state-funded schools don't have a system of assistance and intervention for them. So we color-coded these this way because green really represents the first phase of your work, and purple is just one bubble here, but it's an enormous concept, and it represents the second phase of our work. So Erin, would you switch to the next slide, please? Thank you. So you see these same colors here. Phase 1 is really focused on revising the Achievement Index, but as Ben said, the index itself isn't the goal. The system that the index drives of support and recognition for schools is the ultimate goal. So you'll have 4 meetings between October of this year and April of next year to address questions about performance indicators and how the index should work. And then phase 2, which is here in purple, you'll have 4 more meetings to provide input to the state board on what the state accountability framework, that larger bubble on the previous slide, should include, and to explore ideas of what state and local models for intervention should be created and implemented. So this would be not just for the federal system, but a coherent and aligned state system that addresses all schools' needs.
So it's important to also ask, why is this important for kids? We can spend a lot of time on state structures and policies, but we never want to lose a connection to how this is improving the lives of individual kids in our system. And we think there are at least 2 ways that is true. First of all, teachers and administrators will have the tools they need to self-assess and improve. We think it's very important that we incentivize the right performance in the system, and keeping a focus on student growth incentivizes the right behaviors and outcomes in the system. We also believe that administrators and policymakers will have the information they need to effectively allocate resources and support continuous improvement. Again, it's this notion that the index itself is not meaningful unless it is driving a system of recognition, but also help to schools that need it. If we develop a compelling index, we believe it will galvanize support for the necessary supports for the schools and the kids that need that help.
Good morning, everyone. This is Andy Kelly. I serve as the Assistant Superintendent for the Office of Student and School Success with OSPI. And I'm going to share a little bit with you about the specifics of the ESCA flexibility waiver, some of its benefits, requirements, and how we're working with schools across the state to try and support them. This first slide talks about the real tangible benefits that schools and districts across our state received. And I have to say the largest of which is numbers 2 and 3, which freed up a significant amount of money, about $58 million statewide, that previously was designated for either school choice or mandatory professional development. And this dollar amount that was freed up across our state really was based on the belief that local districts knew what to do to meet the needs of their kids in their district. And so it allows us to provide coaching and feedback, but really allows them at the district to support a differentiated level of support across their schools. The flexibility requirements are really set up to design to ensure a few pieces. Number one, we want to make sure that college and career-ready expectations are available for all students, and that we're really working together to implement the Common Core standards, which, as you know, have been adopted by the state of Washington. We're developing a system of both recognition and accountability and support, and really trying to support effective instruction and leadership in partnership with the TPEP initiative across our state that is designed to change the way we monitor and provide feedback to teachers and principals about how they're doing in supporting their children. Next, as we unpack Principle 2, and this is the principle that really is the meat of the flexibility waiver, this first piece is that we would set ambitious and achievable annual measurable objectives, and from here forward I'll refer to those as AMOs. Again, in the 4 different categories, reward schools, those were the schools that were doing a great job. We wanted to recognize them both for highest progress and highest performing. Priority schools, these are our lowest performing schools in the state, and it really is related to all students across the board looking at their reading and math proficiency. Focus schools are looking at reading and math proficiency as well, but it's focused in on the performance of different subpopulations. For example, students with disabilities or English language learners. And then emerging schools are the next portion up the list of both priority and focus. And there will be a slide coming, I think in 3 more slides, that will demonstrate that more clearly. This next slide demonstrates the accountability system from the past and moving forward, and it really just gives you a visual marker of where we previously have been under AYP, how schools were determined and sort of what happened. Shows us moving into the AMO calculations for beginning in 2012-13 and moving forward. And it also talks about in the little bottom right-hand corner the development of this new accountability index and the importance that will play in our overall system. This next slide gives us a visual depiction of really the old AYP targets. And essentially what the old AYP system did was it said sort of arbitrarily in 2014 100% of all of our kids in every subgroup are going to be proficient. And needless to say, that wasn't exactly working out well. It wasn't differentiated based on where kids started and was really just sort of an arbitrary dart on a board, if you will, with the expectation that we would get there. So one of the things that the old NCLB requirements helped us to do was to disaggregate data by subpopulation and say that it's essential for all kids to achieve. I think what it didn't do was lay out a clearly scripted pathway through which we could do that. And this new program, we really believe, gives us the possibility to move forward in a much more progressive manner. The U.S. Department of Education gave us 3 choices that we could adopt through the flexibility waiver. Choice number A was essentially to set annual equal increments toward the goal of reducing half the percentage of students who are not proficient in all subcategories within 6 years by 2017. Choice B would have essentially moved the 2014 deadline and just reset the position on the board to 2020. And choice C was to develop some other sort of AMO that we could have done independently here in Washington State. The choice that we made was option A, to set annual increments toward the goal of reducing half the percent of students who are not proficient in all subcategories by the fall of 2017. Now this next graph that we're going to look at is a little bit confusing. I want to take a couple minutes on this and start off by emphasizing the text at the top of the slide that nothing has changed in terms of the explicit goal by the State Board or OSPI, and that is our goal that all students meet the standard. What we're trying to do is provide people that roadmap or building blocks to ensure that we actually make progress towards that goal. We really, really want to focus on the reduction of the achievement gap in our subpopulations. And I also want to point out that this slide doesn't end in 2017. So I'd like for you to imagine for a minute that those lines on the right-hand side of your slide continue going in an upward trend until at some point, indeed, all subgroups would reach 100% and absolutely the achievement gap would be eliminated. Just for an example, I'd like you to focus on the bottom line on the slide, and you'll notice that the starting date for these AMOs is 2011. That's the baseline year. So assuming that line is positioned on 20%, what that would tell us is that 20% of the students in that